So we're gonna pick some green bananas today. I get this from the trees to make baskets. It is good and strong and will make a fine basket.
Oh, this looks good. How much for this?
For you.
For you, special price.
Okay, that's enough. Thank you very much. The bananas are very good for you.
How much for these bananas? Those are $3 a bunch.
Under the heavy veil of morning mist, the woman rose with the same quiet determination that had carried her through countless days before. Her hands already worn and calloused by the weight of survival, her eyes carrying both the fatigue of sleepless nights and the fierce fire of maternal love. She strapped her child securely on her back with a faded piece of cloth, the little one murmuring softly in half dreams, unaware of the long road ahead. And she stepped into the damp earth of the hillside farm where rows of banana trees towered like silent guardians. Each leaf trembled in the faint wind, as though whispering encouragement, yet each bunch of bananas she cut loose felt heavier than the last, the burden of sustenance pressing down on her shoulders. But she did not falter. She whispered to the trees as though they were listening, telling them that she would endure, that every cut stem was a promise to her child, that she would turn hardship into bread, into milk, into laughter at the end of the day. The blades of grass brushed against her ankles as she bent low to gather the fruit, her breath steady, her muscles burning with the rhythm of necessity. The forest around her was alive. Cicadas screeched as if mocking her exhaustion. The birds swooped above as though free from all chains. And yet she, a single mother alone in the wilderness, labored with no one but the sleeping child to witness her struggle. The soil clung stubbornly to her feet. Her sweat mingled with the morning dew, but her heart whispered a different story. Each drop of sweat was transformed into a prayer that her little one would one day know a life untouched by this constant toil. And when the baby stirred, whimpering against her back, she stopped her cutting, rocked gently from side to side, humming a broken lullaby that she had inherited from her own mother, as if to remind herself that love was the one wealth she could never lose. By the time the sun had climbed higher, she had gathered enough bananas to fill 2 large bundles, the kind that bent her spine when she tried to lift them, the kind that threatened to break her resolve with sheer weight. She tied them with coarse rope, lifted the pole across her shoulders, and balanced the load with trembling arms. Her child, now awake, clapped his tiny hands as though cheering her on, and she forced a weary smile, whispering to him, "We will make it. This pain is not the end, but the bridge to tomorrow." The path down the hill was rocky, slippery from the rain the night before, and every step carried the danger of a fall. Yet she moved forward, gripping the pole tightly, her heart pounding like a war drum. She imagined the ground beneath her conspiring to test her courage, the trees looming tall as witnesses of her journey. But she refused to surrender, for to surrender meant hunger, meant despair, meant failing the only soul who depended on her. And when the baby stirred, whimpering against her back, she stopped her cutting, rocked gently from side to side, humming a broken lullaby that she had inherited from her own mother, as if to remind herself that love was the one wealth she could never lose. By the time the sun had climbed higher, she had gathered enough bananas to fill 2 large bundles, the kind that bent her spine when she tried to lift them, the kind that threatened to break her resolve with sheer weight. She tied them with coarse rope, lifted the pole across her shoulders, and balanced the load with trembling arms. Her child, now awake, clapped his tiny hands as though cheering her on, and she forced a weary smile, whispering to him, "We will make it. This pain is not the end, but the bridge to tomorrow." The path down the hill was rocky, slippery from the rain the night before, and every step carried the danger of a fall. Yet she moved forward, gripping the pole tightly, her heart pounding like a war drum. She imagined the ground beneath her conspiring to test her courage, the trees looming tall as witnesses of her journey. But she refused to surrender, for to surrender meant hunger, meant despair, meant failing the only soul who depended on her. When she finally reached the village road, her body shook with exhaustion, her breaths shallow and quick, but she tightened the cloth that held her child and pressed on toward the market. The sight of other women already setting up their stalls filled her with a strange mix of envy and strength. For while they had husbands to share the burdens, she had nothing but her own 2 hands, yet those hands had never failed her. At the edge of the market, she set her baskets down, straightened her back, and for the first time that morning, allowed herself a moment to breathe deeply, inhaling the mingled sense of earth, sweat, and possibility. Around her, the crowd bustled, traders shouting prices, children weaving between stalls, and she whispered to her child, "This is our battlefield, little one, and today we must win." Customers came slowly at first, some examining the bananas with disinterest, others asking prices with voices dripping skepticism, as though her worth was measured only by the shine of her fruit. Yet she met each pair of eyes with steady resolve, her tone humble but unwavering, her heart racing with each coin that fell into her palm. And when the kind old woman approached, offering to hold the restless child so that she could serve her buyers without distraction, her throat tightened with unspoken gratitude. She handed over her child with trembling fingers, watching as the baby reached out happily toward the stranger, and in that moment she realized that kindness still bloomed even in soil as harsh as hers. The market seemed less cruel, the noise less suffocating, as if the act of shared humanity had lifted some invisible weight from her shoulders. Through the late morning heat, the bananas slowly disappeared from her baskets, each sale another victory, each exchange another step away from despair. She felt her back ache, her hands stiffen, yet her soul burned with the fire of survival. And when she glanced over at her child playing happily in the old woman's arms, her eyes stung with tears she refused to shed. "For you," she whispered under her breath, "for every breath you take, for every dream I dare to imagine for you, I will fight like this until the world bends." The sky seemed to nod in agreement, a single cloud drifting slowly, as if to shield her from the sun, and she took it as a sign that even nature knew her struggle, that even the heavens bore witness to her devotion. By noon, her baskets were empty, her pockets heavier with coins, and her spirit lighter despite the weight of exhaustion pressing against her bones. She retrieved her child, cradled him close, and bowed her head in thanks to the old woman who had given her not just help, but a reminder that she was not entirely alone in this vast world. The walk home was slower, her steps dragging, yet her heart beating steadier. And as the dirt road stretched out before her, she imagined it as a ribbon guiding her back to safety, to shelter, to the fragile but precious kingdom she had built for herself and her child. She spoke softly to the baby, describing the future she dreamed of, a small school where he could learn, a garden filled with fruit trees, a life where laughter was not weighed down by hunger. When the small hut finally appeared in the distance, its bamboo walls crooked yet standing firm against the wind, she felt a surge of pride that no riches could buy. She pushed the door open, set down her belongings, and lit the small fire where she would prepare their meal, her child toddling nearby with innocent delight. The vegetables she had saved from the garden were simple, just a handful of greens, a few cucumbers, but to her they were treasures, proof that she could still provide. Proof that resilience could bloom even in barren soil. She hummed again as she cooked, watching the smoke curl toward the ceiling like prayers rising into the heavens. And when she placed the bowl before her child, the smile on his face erased the memory of every ache, every tear. The afternoon passed quietly, the sound of chickens clucking outside, the whisper of leaves against the roof. And she found herself seated beside the bed, watching her child drift into sleep. His tiny chest rose and fell with peaceful rhythm, his lips curved into the faintest smile, and she felt her own heart stilling, softening, surrendering to a love that consumed every shadow. She touched his cheek gently, whispering promises he could not yet understand, telling him that no matter how cruel the world might be, she would always be the wall against the storm, the flame against the dark. For a long while she simply sat there, the silence thick yet comforting, her soul resting even as her body ached, because in that silence she found meaning. In that silence she remembered why she endured. Later, as the sun dipped low, she rose and began preparing dough for a simple treat, kneading the mixture with slow, steady movements, her mind weaving dreams into the flour and water. She imagined her child's laughter when he tasted the small cakes, imagined the joy in his eyes, and her tired hands moved faster, as though love itself guided them. The smell of warm bread soon filled the room, mixing with the fading scent of smoke, wrapping the home in a cocoon of comfort. When the boy awoke and toddled toward her, eyes bright with curiosity, she lifted him into her lap, and together they shared the warm, soft cakes, their laughter mingling with the crickets beginning their evening song outside. The day had drained her body, but sitting there with her child nestled against her, the world felt softer, less cruel, and she allowed herself a small smile, fragile yet radiant. She knew tomorrow would bring the same labor, the same hardships, the same endless climb against the weight of poverty. But she also knew that tomorrow would bring the same love, the same laughter, the same unbreakable bond. The fire flickered low, shadows dancing on the bamboo walls like silent guardians, and she whispered into the night, "As long as we are together, we will survive. As long as I breathe, you will never face the dark alone." Outside, the moon rose quietly, silver light spilling across the roof, across the fields, across the weary woman and her child. The village slept, the world hushed, and within the fragile walls of her small home, strength was being forged. Not in grand battles, not in golden halls, but in the simple, relentless love of a mother who refused to break. The night carried her words, her hopes, her unyielding spirit into the stars, and though no one else heard, the universe itself seemed to bow in recognition, for it knew that here, in this humble place, a story of survival and love was being written with every breath. The morning light seeped through the bamboo slats of the small hut, golden rays stretching across the floor like threads of hope woven by unseen hands. The woman stirred from her thin mat, her body aching from the previous day's labor, yet her heart quickened when she heard the soft babbling of her child. His laughter was like a bell ringing in the silence, fragile yet powerful, a reminder that no matter how heavy her burdens, joy still found a way to bloom. She rose quietly, brushed the dust from her worn clothes, and greeted him with a smile that masked her exhaustion. The day ahead promised no rest, but her arms felt lighter when they carried him, her voice steadier when she whispered promises that he would one day understand.
The world outside greeted her with cool air, the scent of wet earth lingering after the night's rain, and she stepped into it as though stepping into battle. Today she would not harvest bananas. Instead, she planned to tend the small patch of garden near the house, coaxing cucumbers and pumpkins from the stubborn soil. She set her child nearby on a soft cloth, giving him a small wooden toy carved by a neighbor long ago, and began her work. The hoe struck the earth with a steady rhythm, each movement a song of defiance against hunger, each bead of sweat a seed of sacrifice. She paused often to check on her child, smiling at his laughter, grateful that he found wonder in the smallest things. The earth resisted her, hard and dry beneath the surface, but she pressed on, whispering encouragement to the soil, as if it too were a weary soul in need of comfort. As the sun climbed higher, her child toddled toward her, his small hands grabbing fistfuls of soil, his laughter echoing across the quiet field. She lifted him into her arms, kissed the dirt from his cheeks, and let herself laugh with him, the sound breaking free from the cage of fatigue. "We will make this land our friend," she told him softly, "and it will feed us if we give it our love." She set him down again and returned to her work, her movements slower now, but her determination unshaken. The soil gave way little by little, revealing its hidden strength, and soon neat rows stretched before her, ready to nurture the seeds she would plant. In that moment, she felt not just like a farmer, but like a creator, shaping a future from the stubborn earth with nothing but her hands and her hope. By midday, her back screamed in protest, her arms heavy, but the sight of the small garden, newly tended and promising life, filled her with quiet pride. She gathered her child, washed his tiny hands at the stream, and carried him home for lunch. The simple meal of rice and greens tasted like a feast, flavored not with spices, but with the satisfaction of progress. Her child ate eagerly, his cheeks full, and she watched him with the kind of awe usually reserved for miracles, because to her, he was one. The room seemed brighter with him there, the walls less fragile, the silence less cruel. She wiped his mouth gently, whispered another promise, and tucked him into her arms, feeling his small heartbeat steady against her own.
The afternoon brought visitors, 2 women from the village passing by, baskets heavy with corn and beans. They stopped at her door, offering friendly words and a handful of fresh produce, insisting she take them as a gift. Her throat tightened with gratitude. She wanted to refuse, pride whispering in her ear, but hunger shouted louder. She accepted with trembling hands, bowing her head in thanks, and as they walked away, she turned to her child with tears glistening in her eyes. "See," she murmured, "kindness still exists in this world, and one day you must give it back." The food they brought would stretch their meals for days, and she knew she had been given more than nourishment. She had been given proof that her struggles were seen, her humanity recognized. Later that day, she carried her child to the river, the sun dipping low and painting the water with streaks of gold. She washed his small clothes by hand, the cold water numbing her fingers, while he splashed nearby with giggles that echoed like music across the quiet banks. She watched him play and felt a strange peace settle over her. The river seemed to cleanse not just clothes, but also the heaviness in her heart. She thought of the years ahead, of the many battles still waiting, but she also thought of how far they had already come. "You are my reason," she whispered to the river, to the sky, to anyone listening, "and I will never stop." When they returned home, the sky had darkened, stars beginning to pierce through the veil of night. She lit a small fire, its glow casting flickering shadows on the bamboo walls, and began cooking the corn the villagers had given her. The scent filled the room, warm and comforting, and she felt as though the walls themselves leaned closer to embrace her. Her child clapped his hands at the sight of the steaming bowl, and together they ate in silence, savoring not just the food, but the rare gift of security. Each bite was a victory, each smile a balm, and she allowed herself to believe, just for that night, that tomorrow would not be as cruel. After dinner, she bathed her child in a small wooden tub, the water warm from the fire, his laughter filling the tiny home like a blessing. She dried him with the care of a priest tending holy relics, kissed his forehead, and dressed him in the clean clothes she had washed by the river. As she laid him down to sleep, she sang softly, her voice rough yet tender, the words carrying centuries of sorrow and hope passed from mother to child. His eyes closed slowly, his breathing evened, and she watched him drift into dreams with the quiet certainty that everything she endured was worth it. Alone in the quiet night, she sat by the fire, staring at the dying embers, her mind wandering. She thought of her own mother, of the lessons she had been taught got endurance, about faith, about the strength hidden in silence. She wondered what her son would remember of these days, whether he would see only the poverty or whether he would see the love that had lit every moment. She whispered into the flames, as though her ancestors could hear, "Give me strength, just a little more, so I can give him the world." The fire crackled in response, sparks leaping like stars, and she took it as an answer, a silent vow from the universe itself. As the night deepened, the village hushed, and she curled beside her child, drawing him close, breathing in the sweet scent of innocence that clung to him. Her body was tired, her soul worn, but her spirit refused to bend. She knew the next day would bring more work, more trials, more hunger. But she also knew that as long as she could rise each morning, she could keep moving forward. The night wrapped around them like a blanket, the stars watching silently, and she drifted into sleep with a single thought blazing in her mind. Love was her weapon, love was her shield, and with it, she could face anything. The dawn arrived with a veil of mist clinging to the banana trees, their leaves dripping with silver droplets that shimmered like scattered jewels. The single mother woke to the sound of her child stirring, his small whimper breaking the fragile stillness. She pulled him close, pressing her cheek against his warm forehead, whispering promises into his hair as if the world would listen and honor them. Rising from her mat, her body sore yet unyielding, she stepped outside to greet the new day. The sky was pale with hope, though her heart still carried the weight of uncertainty. She looked at the garden she had nurtured, the rows of seedlings now stretching their tiny arms toward the sun, and felt the faint spark of triumph. It was not much, but it was life, and it was theirs. The morning hours unfolded in quiet labor, her hands weaving between housework and childcare, every movement deliberate, efficient, the rhythm of survival etched into her bones. She swept the floor, patched the bamboo wall where the wind had crept through, and boiled water over the fire. The child followed her, clapping, giggling, pulling at her skirt, his laughter ringing in the humble home like a blessing. At times she paused just to watch him, amazed at how something so small could ignite such fierce strength in her. She thought of how others saw only poverty, only the hardship carved into her face, but she knew she was holding something priceless. The bond between her and her son was a fortress, and within it, no cruelty of the world could penetrate.
By midday, she strapped the child to her back with a faded cloth and set out toward the hills once more. The weight was familiar, both a burden and a comfort. His small body pressed against hers, his heartbeat a steady rhythm urging her forward. The path was steep, the ground uneven, yet she moved with the resilience of one who had walked it countless times. She reached the banana grove and began her work, the machete slicing through thick stems, each cut echoing like defiance. Sweat poured down her face, soaking her clothes, but she pressed on, her thoughts consumed by the needs of tomorrow. The fruit she harvested would be coins, the coins would be meals, the meals would be strength, and the strength would be hope. She whispered this chain of survival under her breath, as though it were a prayer. At the market, the bustle of life surged around her, voices calling, laughter mixing with the clatter of baskets and the cries of children. She spread her bananas carefully, arranging them with pride, each bunch gleaming in the light. Buyers came, some bargaining hard, others offering fair prices, and she accepted it all with a weary smile. Nearby, her child sat on a mat, a kind old woman once again keeping him entertained, her wrinkled hands guiding his as he stacked pebbles like building blocks. The sight softened the mother's heart, reminding her that kindness often sprouted in the least expected corners. She bowed her head in gratitude, promising herself that one day she would return the gesture. One day she would stand on firmer ground and extend her hand to someone else who needed it. As the day waned, her baskets emptied, her coins clinked softly in the pouch hidden beneath her clothes. It was not much, yet it was enough to buy a little rice, a piece of fish, a small treat for her child. She walked home slowly, savoring the rare sweetness of knowing that tonight they would not go to bed hungry. The sky blazed with the colors of sunset, crimson and gold painting the horizon, and she lifted her son into her arms so he could see it too. His eyes widened, and he laughed, as if the entire sky had been lit only for him. The mother's throat tightened, tears threatening, because in his laughter she heard the promise of a future she still dared to believe in.
Back at the hut, she prepared their simple supper. The fire glowed brightly, casting flickering shadows on the bamboo walls, and the air filled with the aroma of rice and fish simmering gently. She fed her child first, spooning tiny bites into his eager mouth, watching his delight as though she were serving him a royal feast. She ate after him, savoring each mouthful not for its taste, but for the security it represented. Together they laughed, their voices mingling with the crackle of the fire, a fragile symphony of survival and love. She knew the world outside might see only two poor souls struggling against fate, but within these walls they were rich. Rich in love, rich in resilience, rich in moments that mattered. After dinner, she surprised her child with the treat she had bought, a small piece of sweet cake wrapped in a banana leaf. His eyes sparkled as he took the first bite, crumbs scattering across his cheeks, and she laughed, wiping them gently away. Watching him savor something so simple reminded her that happiness was not measured in gold or possessions, but in shared moments, fleeting yet eternal in memory. She thought of all the sacrifices she had made, all the nights spent hungry so he could eat, and realized it was worth every hardship. For in his joy, she found her purpose, and in her purpose, she found strength to endure. Night settled around them, the village quieting, the stars emerging one by one like watchful guardians. She bathed her son, humming softly as she poured warm water over his tiny shoulders, his laughter echoing like bells in the stillness. Afterward, she wrapped him in a soft cloth, held him against her chest, and rocked him gently until his eyelids fluttered closed. She laid him down, kissed his forehead, and lingered beside him, her eyes drinking in the sight of his peaceful face. In that quiet moment, she allowed herself to dream, not of riches or escape, but of a future where he would grow strong, kind, and free from the chains of poverty. Alone again, she sat by the fire, its embers glowing faintly, and let her mind wander. She thought of the many battles still ahead, the debts yet to be paid, the endless labor waiting in the fields. Yet she also thought of the kindness she had received at the market, the laughter of her child, the garden that had begun to grow. She realized that life, though cruel, also offered gifts in unexpected ways. She whispered a prayer of thanks, not for what she lacked, but for what she had, her son, her strength, her unyielding spirit. In the silence, she felt a quiet certainty bloom within her. She was not defeated. She was enduring, and endurance was its own kind of victory.
The night deepened, and she lay beside her son, drawing him close, feeling the steady rise and fall of his breath. Her body was weary, her hands rough, her back bent, but her heart beat strong, filled with a love that no hardship could extinguish. She closed her eyes, listening to the whispers of the night, the rustle of leaves, the distant call of an owl, the steady hum of life continuing despite all obstacles. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new trials, but she was ready. For she had learned that happiness was not waiting at the end of the road. It was here, in the laughter of her child, in the warmth of their fire, in the quiet strength of her heart. And with that truth cradled in her soul, she drifted into dreams, knowing that no matter what, they would endure.